everyone, my name is Ariana Curry, and today I'm going to be presenting my cultural project on Jeanne d'Arc, otherwise known as Joan of Arc. She was, and continues to be, one of the most well-known and revered Catholic saints in French history for a number of reasons of which I'll go over in this presentation. Joan was born on January 6 around 1412 in the village of Domremy, which would now be in Lorraine in modern France. She could not read or write, but grew up a devout Catholic due to her parents' practiced faith, a trait of hers that would be extremely significant to her life, but also ultimately lead to her death. The English had begun invading and conquering France when she was just 3 years old in 1415 during the 100 Years' War. A small extra fact you may not know about her is that while her name, Joan d'Arc, is due to her father's surname, she rarely used this name when referring to herself. Often, she would call herself Jeanne la Pucelle, which translates to Joan the Maid. This was both to show her purity and virginity, as well as her status as God's chosen servant to carry out his messages. When Joan was 12 years old, in the year 1424, she began to start hearing voices and having multiple visions. She told her family and anyone else willing to listen that they were the faces and voices of the Archangel Michael, Saint Margaret, and Saint Catherine, corporeal enough for her to touch and see them. Sometimes she also told them that she wouldn't just see and hear those three, but also have visions of groups of angels from heaven as well. According to royal documents, as well as the testimony Joan made herself, she was actually one of 3 occasions where someone in France could see and hear these beings. The visions at first would instruct her to go to church and be a good person, but as time went on, they would instruct her to do much more significant things for the sake of her country. In 1428, the war was not in the favor of the French whatsoever, but the voices of the saints in Joan's head continuously told her to go to France, as in the royal domain, and drive out the English forces from their land and get a rightful King Charles on the throne as opposed to the British line who had overtaken it years prior. At just 16 years old, Joan went to Vaucouleurs in an attempt to meet with King Charles. She was rejected by Lord Robert de Baudricourt at first, but after pleading 3 times, was eventually granted his permission to visit King Charles in Chinon. While being escorted, she was dressed in men's clothing in order to keep hidden from enemy troops as well as to keep Joan's purity intact, because the cords on the boots and tunics could be used to secure her clothing more properly. She continued to don these clothes during times of warfare, and not because she necessarily wanted to look like a man, but because she was constantly surrounded by soldiers, and it worked for both Joan's functionality and safety among the war. She was also known to crop her hair shorter to a male's length as well. After earning the favor of King Charles, she was given a custom-made suit of armor before being allowed to join the ranks of the army. It was here that the French morale began to turn around, because people began to believe that a true saint was leading them to victory. One of the biggest causes of this was the fact that she would directly get into the same crossfire her troops were in, fighting alongside them instead of barking orders from the side. She successfully led her troops to win at the Siege of Orleans, which was the closest the English were going to get to taking full control, and this greatly changed the tide for France's fight to independence during the 100 Years' War. Joan didn't stop there, though. She continued to fight and take back many other areas of France in other battles, such as the March to Reims and the taking back of Loire Valley. However, in 1930, the Burgundian troops working with the British had swarmed her and asked for her surrender. She refused, and not willing to leave her own troops, was captured. After her capture, Joan was put on trial for a multitude of things, including claims of heresy, witchcraft, false soothsaying, and of course, cross-dressing. These accusations filled up 12 articles of contents. She at first would not dissent from her own faith and beliefs, but eventually feeling the threats of torture looming in, she decided to sign a document stating that the voices she'd heard had all been false, and also agreed to stop cross-dressing. It wasn't until days later that she decided to stay true to her own beliefs, donning the men's clothes she was forbidden to wear, but also the only clothes she had, and was subsequently sentenced to death on account of being a heretic. On May 30th, 1431, Joan was burned at the stake at 19 years old for her crimes against the English. However, she did not go without forgiving her accusers and requesting that they pray for her. Her influence and perseverance throughout the 100 Years' War was not taken for granted by the French, and even up to 1920, when she was canonized as the patron saint of France and its armies, there were countless works of art, statues, and other medias created to preserve her legacy and good name. Here are a list of my works cited for my sources, both articles and images. Thank you so much for your time.